So last night I had an emotionally disturbing dream, and over the last couple weeks I noticed that I've been having emotionally disturbing dreams. So this morning, as soon as I woke up out of the dream, the first thing I said to myself was, where is the planet Neptune? Where's the planet Neptune at? So I Googled it, and because the planet Neptune has to do with dreams, it's about dreams and spirituality, illusions, inspiration. So I'm having these crazy dreams, and I'm not a dreamer. I don't dream very often. So when I do dream, I know that it's usually important. But anyways, so I immediately was like, where is the planet Neptune? Because my dreams are like crazy right now. These are haunting dreams. And remember, we're in this month of Chesvan, which is the time in which we are under the constellation Scorpio, which represents the underworld, the dark depths. Okay, so stuff is kind of haunting or associated with death and judgment during this month. So I've been having these haunting dreams. So I'm like, where is Neptune? I go and look, and Neptune has retrograded back into Pisces. Okay, so Neptune, this planet, Neptune, it takes 165 years to cycle through the zodiac. So in March 2025, March 30th this year, Neptune entered into the sign of Aries for the first time in 165 years. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, so it began a new cycle. But on October 22nd of this year, so just recently, like a couple weeks ago, when I started having these crazy dreams, Neptune retrograded back into the sign of Pisces, and Pisces is the 12th sign of the zodiac, the 12th house, and Pisces is about spirituality in the spiritual realm. And so Neptune is going to stay in Pisces, retrograded in the sign of Pisces. So that means that it's going backwards into the sign of Pisces, which means a reevaluation. It's bringing up things that need to be looked at again so that you can process it and release it and learn whatever it is that you need to learn and be able to let it go, right? So Pisces Neptune is going to remain in the sign of Pisces until January 26th of 2026, which is a day after my birthday. Then Neptune will re-enter the sign of Aries and stay there until March 2039. So Neptune has been associated with Pisces since the year 2011 and 2012, which is interesting because Neptune has to do with like spiritual awakenings as well. So like 2011 is when I really surrendered to God and got really serious. And 2010, there was some things that happened, that some promises that I made to God that led to 2011 being a huge year of awakening for me, right? And this is when, of spiritual awakening to be exact. And this is when Neptune entered Pisces, okay? The house of spirituality. So this current transit of Neptune is marking the very last part of its journey in this sign of Pisces. So this is its final go in the sign of Pisces until it officially moves into the sign of Aries and stays there, and then goes on to journey through the rest of the zodiac. So it's starting a completely new cycle. Okay, but this is the last round in the sign of Pisces. So this is the last like clean out. This is the last go around. This is the last taking a look, reflecting and releasing and learning whatever it is that God is having us learn, that is bringing a close to this part. And I talked this part of our journey, of our spiritual journey and spiritual awakening. And I talked about in my last video how this full moon has to do with it being the ending of a 10-year cycle. Okay, so we've got a lot of big endings that are happening right now for us collectively. Okay, so during this time, Neptune will remain in the final degree of Pisces until January 26, 2026. So this is a time where it's important for reflection and letting go of old illusions, okay? Because Neptune can be about illusions. And I will say that the dreams that I have been having have been haunting, and they have been having to do with trauma from my childhood and also from the last 10 to 13 years of my life. And so it's bringing up old traumas. And it's important for us to understand what's happening, because it's so easy. We have an ego, and we have a very fragile ego as humans. And so it's easy for us to get emotionally caught up and emotionally manipulated by the things that we experience in this world. And it's easier for us to get a grip and get out of our feelings, disconnect from our feelings in a sense of not becoming insecure, not allowing it to make us insecure, and to emotionally shut down. So understanding that if you're having these dreams, these haunting dreams, these can seem like maybe even tormenting dreams, that it's not because we can easily be like, oh, well, I must be doing something wrong, or oh, we can come into a victim mentality, and oh, I'm just never gonna, this is always gonna haunt me, and I'm never gonna overcome, and I'm never gonna be able to, get away from my past or move past the trauma, but that's not true. It's just that it is a process, and the part of the process that we are currently in is the very last leg of the journey of Neptune in Pisces, which brings about spiritual awakening and shows us where there's spiritual illusions, and so we can overcome them and release those things. And God's been speaking to me a lot about how he is bringing us into a place of stability and joy that's going to restore back our childhood and that childlike sense of purity, of adventure, of carefreeness. Because like last night, my dream was associated with my childhood and a major thing that happened in my childhood. And my childhood was very, very unstable and very traumatic. But there was a point, a window of time in my childhood that I felt that I had the most stability. But then that was taken away from me in a very traumatic and very rapid, like sudden, shocking way. So that was what my dream was about, and that's kind of what my dream was replaying for me. And so it's like God, to me, what I am sensing from the Lord is that these things, these traumas are coming forth for the last time within having to do with this period of time of spiritual growth and spiritual healing and spiritual awakening, because we're being exited out of the woundedness of that place of what we've been experiencing in our lifetime, and we're coming into a new time of spiritual awakening and spiritual growth and healing. So if you too are experiencing haunting dreams like this, it is not for you to become the victim in your mind and to get depressed and to let it get you down. This is confirmation that you're actually transitioning past and beyond all that hurt, all that trauma, and moving into a new timeline where your joy is going to be restored, where those things are going to be processed, dealt with, and put away. And this is part of that putting away. And then, like I said, in January 26, 2026, Neptune is going to re-enter the sign of Aries. And it's going to stay there until March of 2039. So we're going to have a whole new timeline and time period of spiritual awakening. And it's really going to be focused on the self, because Aries is about the self. And this period of Neptune being in the sign of Aries is going to be characterized by a fusion of Neptune's themes of spirituality, dreams, and illusions with Aries' themes of action, individuality, and courage, potentially leading to a collective awakening of spiritual consciousness and new forms of leadership and creative rebellion. Historically, this transit of Neptune and Aries has coincided with periods of intense conflict and radical change, such as the American Civil War in the 1860s. Okay, so this is what we can kind of expect the theme to look like in the upcoming transit of Neptune being in the sign of Aries. This transit is seen as initiating a new era of culture and ideological change, inspiring movements that prioritize personal empowerment, freedom, and a redefinition of selfhood. Okay, so like who you are is going to be completely redefined because we've done the work of the time period of Neptune in Pisces. We've done the spiritual work and released the spiritual baggage that now we're stepping into a new level of spiritual awakening and just a new self. Like, this is our rebrand where we get to embody like that childlike identity that we had to suppress, that we had to, because we had to survive, because we had to protect ourselves, and we didn't have the environment or the freedom or the protection, the safety to really embody who we are in our purest form without conforming to survive, or without being labeled as something we're not, or people projecting things onto us that are false. Now we're moving into a place where we get to be our authentic self, where we have the confidence. So the labels and the boxes that people have tried to keep us in are no longer going to work. So that's exciting. And this Neptune in Aries is going to be a time of spiritual and creative expression. There can be a surge of visionary leadership and spiritual activism, with the collective being called to channel their imagination into bold new paradigms that balance spiritual unity and individual sovereignty. Potential challenges that can come with Neptune in Aries is the combination of Aries impulsiveness with Neptune's potential for illusion. And this can manifest as burnout or a tendency to romanticize conflict and Mars-related themes. Clarity may be elusive as new impulses emerge. So just stay really grounded to avoid burnout and to avoid like going off the deep end. Okay, because it's exciting to have spiritual awakenings and to experience spiritual liberation. But if you don't stay rooted and grounded, then you can go into psychosis. So, and that will definitely make you feel burnt out or mentally like off your rocker. Like, I'm all for the woo-woo, but like woo-woo grounded in reality and truth and spiritual truth and integrity and reality, not woo-woo that's like, okay, you've gone too far. So that's going to be what's taking place in January 26, 2026. That will kick off. But for the here and now, we are in a retrograde of Neptune in Pisces. So I really feel like, it's important that we do, that we are aware of this final work that's being done concerning us, our lives, our spiritual growth. Right now, it's about reflection and release, okay? And not judging things when they come up. Okay, so when you're having these dreams and it's bringing up the past, this is not the time to go off the deep end and become the victim and get depressed and become unmotivated to continue to grow because you think that you're failing, or you're just tired of the process and of being attacked. This is not an attack. It is simply, we have to learn to control our emotions and our thoughts. And we have to understand that this is coming up because we're being moved into a more liberating spiritual awakening, awareness, and reality for our life. So it's actually means that you are in alignment. It means that you are in alignment. Now, I've been watching this series that the Lord led me to watch, and I got a bunch of confirmations and downloads through it. But one of the episodes, they are having to go into this machine that brings up their biggest fears. And in order for them to pass the test and pass the grade and make a good grade on this test, they have to go into this simulation, be confronted with their biggest fears, and then they have to come up with a plan to overcome their biggest fears. And then they're going to be, they'll get a passing grade for this particular assignment. So I resonated with that because whenever things have gotten really tough and I feel like giving up, I think about that. I think, okay, like, you're stressing. What are you afraid of? What is the worst that could happen? And I think about the worst that could happen, which for me is the scariest thing for me is not being able to provide financially for my children. So I go over, first of all, I remind myself that God is my provider and he has not failed me thus far. And he's not going to fail me, right? So first I remember that truth. And then second, I'm like, okay, like, let's say the worst case scenario is I just lose everything. You know, I always have my mom. I do not want to go live with my mom. She lives an hour away and I would be driving about 2 hours to get to my business and to get in an hour to get kids to school. And it's in a small town where there's just not like, it's not a place where you can really make a good living. So I wouldn't want to do that, but worst case scenario, I know that I could do that. And I'm like, okay, it'll be okay. Whatever happens, it'll be okay. But, you know, that's worst case scenario and that hasn't happened. And thank God he's a provider. But there's been times in my life where I thought I was about to just lose it all. And yeah, so I've had to come to that thought and be like, okay, it'll be all right. Like, so facing your fears and understanding that, like, when they went into the little simulation machine, everybody else, like all the other students, could see what their fears were. And like some of them would reassure them, like, that's not true. That's not real. Like, I don't think that about you, because some of them was like, their biggest fear was like the way that other people perceive them or letting their parents down, you know, so they had to face these internal fears that they had and realize that they weren't even true, or like they weren't going to manifest. They hadn't manifested and they weren't true. And their biggest fears basically were an illusion. So at this time, whatever it is that is coming up, like for me, the stuff that's coming up is part reality because it's some of the things that I've experienced, but it's part illusion, right? Like the enemy wants me to feel like I can never move past my past, and I'll never move past the hurt, the pain, or the effects that happened from those traumatic experiences, because those experiences did derail my life. And some of those experiences were outside of my control. They were due to other people's actions. And because of it, my life, the trajectory of my life became very difficult. And I'm still struggling to stabilize myself to this day. But the truth of the matter is that that's not always going to define, and it doesn't define who I am, but it's not always going to be that I'm stuck in the reality that has manifested because of those things, because of people's choices. And some of those things, another dream that I had was based on my own choice. It was a choice that I made, a choice that I made based on a lie that I was fed, but still I made that choice. And now I'm coming out of that. I've moved out of that choice, but still the lingering effects of choices made still affect where I'm at today. But the reality of it all is that those things taught me very valuable lessons and built very strong character and built my relationship with God and helped me discover who I am at my core and in my innocence, so that I can step into this new level of spiritual growth, maturity, reality, and awakening. So I hope this is all making sense. Basically, we do have to face our fears, and we do have to release the past. And how I find it possible to release the past is by being grateful for the lessons that I did learn through those experiences, and knowing that everything that has happened to me is not happening to me, but it's happening for me. It's happening to get me where I want to be and to show me who I am and to help me rediscover my innocence and to step into a new dimension of myself and a new time period in my life where now everything gets restored back to me. Everything that I wanted from childhood, all I wanted was stability. Stability and love. That's what I wanted. And that's what many of us want. As a child, we just want to be loved and we want to feel like we have stability. And for many of us, in many different ways, that was stolen from us. And that stole also our innocence, because we had to shift our mentality into a place of surviving and in a place of protecting ourselves. And so God is moving us into a place where those are the things of the past, and God is stabilizing our life. And as we've been discovering who we are, we have the self-love, which is necessary in order to receive genuine love from another person, and especially romantically. So now that we have discovered ourselves, have healed to this degree, and learned to love ourselves and be our authentic self, we are about to receive, if you're single, someone who can match that, someone who sees that in you and loves that and adds to that. So we're moving into a really beautiful time. Of course, we still live in the world that we live in, but how we navigate it and how we perceive it is going to be different. And just a couple little random, but not so random things that I wanted to share, that can maybe be confirmations for you, is this morning, when I walked to my car, I realized that my $50 bill was on the ground right next to my car door. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that means that last night it fell out of my car. And it's been sitting there since last night and nobody picked it up. So this morning when I went out to my car and it was daylight, nobody had picked it up, and I was able to realize that I had dropped my $50 bill. So for whoever needs this confirmation, know that your finances are being divinely protected. Your finances are being divinely protected by God. And then another thing that the Lord has given me is that I kept seeing the number 24 everywhere, 24, 24, 24, and it was within a 5-minute time period. So it definitely stood out to me. So I looked up 24, 24 in the Strong's Concordance, and it actually means Jesus, and it means Jehovah is salvation, and is used for the Messiah as well as other individuals named Joshua. Okay. And we have been talking about Joshua and about entering into the promised land. So, one of the ways that I saw this number 24 was I saw 24 on my clock in my car, and then 24 on the dashboard where the speedometer is. I don't know if it was the miles or something. And then I looked to my left right at the same time, all within the same time. I look to my left and I see a business and I see a sign that says 24 hours. So I really feel like this was speaking that this is the hour of Christ. This is the hour of the woman birthing Christ in the earth. This is the hour of vindication. This is the hour of judgment. And for some of you, this morning, now I received that last week, but this morning, as God brought it back up to me as something to release for you guys, I had the sense that for some of you, in 24 hours, something of significance would happen for you. So I just wanted to share that. I wanted to share these things to help you guys get confirmations that you need, get encouragement that you need, get the perspective that you need for things you may be experiencing, and to just get some more clarity on your journey to help you just overcome and to help you just keep your emotions stable at this time. Okay. This is so important. And this is truly how you will be able to be victorious in spiritual warfare of any kind and any to any degree is if you can stay emotionally grounded and emotionally stable, because everything that comes at you is an attempt to emotionally destabilize you and to get you to react and be reactive in your emotions. And the more that you have control and discernment over your emotions, the more that you can sit outside of your emotions and reflect and discern them and get to the bottom of them, so that you can discern when you're being emotionally led and it's not rooted in truth or wisdom, and it will help you be emotionally aware so that you can be anchored in truth and you can anchor your emotions in truth. And you're not just going off of knee-jerk reactions, but you're sitting back, you're reflecting, you're connecting with yourself and with your internal emotions, and having them anchored in truth. You can be led in the right way, and you can act in the right way and be able to act instead of react. You'll be able to act and be led by the wisdom of God and by truth and by spiritual realities that are anchored in truth, and that will lead you in the right way to go and the right way to address a matter. And this goes back to also the biggest fears. Like, our fears can change from day to day and season to season. So it's okay to face your fears head on. Okay. When we try to numb ourselves by self-medicating or distracting ourselves, sticking our head in the sand, it does nothing beneficial for us. It just delays our breakthroughs. It delays our progress. It delays our growth. So we have to be willing to face it head on, and to realize that a lot of it is just an illusion. A lot of it hasn't happened, and it probably isn't going to happen. And if it does happen, worst case scenario happens, God is a God of miracles. He can get you out of a pit. And oftentimes we just have to know that whatever does happen, it's not happening to us, it's happening for us. So let's say the worst case scenario happens. Just know that whatever happens, it's going to still be a stepping stone to get you to where you need to be. So be at peace with that. But anyways, I hope this helped. I hope it made sense. I hope it resonates and brings some clarity. But as always, be blessed.